On January 15, 2018, Louise Porton dialed the 999 emergency contact number, reporting that her 3-year-old daughter, Lexi Draper, was unconscious and not breathing. Despite the urgency of the situation, when the paramedics arrived, Louise's demeanor was unsettlingly calm. As they rushed to assist Lexi, they were met with a chilling sight. A lifeless body, her skin tinged blue and her jaw clenched tightly shut. Despite their desperate efforts, it was too late. The 3-year-old was pronounced dead at the scene, but the tragedy didn't end there. Just 18 days later, Louise made another call, this time to the 111 non-emergency number, reporting that her 17-month-old daughter, Scarlet Vaughn, wasn't breathing. In an extreme situation like this, why did Porton call 111, which is a non-emergency number, instead of 999? Did she think the numbers were the same? Or was there something more sinister behind her actions? The deaths of both children cast suspicion on Louise, prompting a closer look at her background. As investigators delved deeper, Louise's past began to reveal a darker side. Louise Porton was born in 1996 in the town of Walsall, located outside Birmingham in the UK. She grew up with her mother, Porton, and 2 siblings. From a young age, even as a child, Louise's behavior was a challenge for her family. While her family was close-knit, Louise often stood apart, displaying manipulative and cunning tendencies. She would often lie to her parents and try to manipulate her siblings and cousins, getting them into trouble. Notably, Louise displayed violent behavior towards her siblings and cousins, threatening them physically on multiple occasions. As she grew older, Louise's relationship with her family deteriorated further, especially with her mother. Her mother's affair and departure when Louise was a teenager had deepened her animosity towards her. Despite her siblings maintaining contact with their mother, Louise had cut ties completely. During her teenage years, Louise's behavior continued to worsen. She frequently clashed with her family, neglected school, and even got into trouble with the police. It's reported that she engaged in theft and displayed selfish and cold behavior. Additionally, Louise's apparent promiscuity became a significant issue. She sought attention from men, often using physical intimacy as a means to gain gifts and money. This behavior continued into her adulthood, where she extended it to online platforms, engaging with numerous men in exchange for gifts and money. Alongside this, Louise was also active online, posting photos to attract attention from men. She engaged in various forms of cosplay, dressing up in different costumes and sending out photos in exchange for payments or gifts. Over time, her photos became more revealing and she began claiming to be a model. Louise signed up with several model agencies, including one called Purple Port. However, the legitimacy of Purple Port is questionable, as some online reports suggest it may be used for exploitative purposes. Despite potential risks, Louise pursued modeling opportunities and offered intimate services to photographers for money. In addition to her modeling endeavors, Louise became a mother in late 2014 at the age of 18, giving birth to her first daughter, Lexi. However, she did not settle down and continued her lifestyle. Despite being a mother, Louise also had a strained relationship with Lexi's father, Chris Draper. Louise also had conflicts with her family, which were aggravated by her online behavior and refusal to prioritize her daughter's well-being. When her grandmother passed away, Louise's refusal to visit or attend the funeral led to further estrangement from her family. Despite these issues, Louise had another child, Scarlet, at the age of 20 with the same father as Lexi. As the children grew, Louise's actions became increasingly concerning. She spent hours every day on dating apps and websites seeking casual encounters and making money from these relationships. Louise would frequently leave her children with others or alone at home under the care of her landlady while she went out to meet strangers. This was to the point where the children spent more time with the landlady than with their own mother. In some cases, she even brought these men back to her home, putting her children in danger. Family members and acquaintances had grown increasingly worried about the safety and welfare of Lexi and Scarlet. They had reported Louise to social services, but no action was taken. The situation worsened as Louise began to view her children as a burden in her life, particularly when it came to her physical exploits. As Louise's life continued to spiral out of control, her relationship with her children's father, Chris Draper, remained strained. She even refused to allow him any contact with Lexi and Scarlet, going as far as giving Scarlet a different last name, Vaughn. This situation had taken a dark turn when Louise decided to move the family to Skidad Rugby, an hour away from Chris, effectively cutting him off from his children. Louise's sister Karen Porton had also tried to extend help and offer support whenever she could. However, Louise's priorities remained skewed. Many of the men she interacted with were clearly not suitable, with one even referring to her children as babies. Family members continued to express their worries to Louise, but she dismissed their concerns and even made light of the situation. Many had speculated that Louise might have given her children sedative medications to keep them unconscious while she pursued her own interests. In the following months in 2017, this negligence and abuse took a toll on Lexi and Scarlet, who were left to fend for themselves in their mother's absence. As Louise's relationship with her children deteriorated, so did her mental state. She became more aggressive and verbally abusive, lashing out at her children at the slightest provocations. On multiple occasions, she repeatedly subjected Lexi and Scarlet to physical violence, beating them to manipulate their actions and silence their cries. Social services continued to fail to intervene, leaving Louise free to continue her destructive path. As Louise continued to be consumed by her own desires and unable to cope with the responsibilities of motherhood, she had reached a grim decision and had devised a plan to rid herself of the burden her children had become. On January 2, 2018, Louise reached out to her sister, expressing worry about Lexi experiencing a fit. However, Louise only made the call after Lexi's condition had significantly worsened. This carelessness continued even after Lexi was discharged from the hospital, with Louise focusing more on her dating activities than her daughter's health. Meanwhile, Louise's Google searches showed a darker truth to the investigators. She had searched about suffocation, breathlessness in children, and how it might lead to death. And slowly, the investigators came to realize that her Google searches were not driven by genuine concern, but rather a more sinister motive. Tragically, just 2 days later, on January 4, 2018, Lexi fell seriously ill, and Louise called 999, claiming her daughter had stopped breathing. However, her emotionless demeanor during the call had raised further doubts about her sincerity. When paramedics arrived, they found Lexi in a critical condition with her lips, fingers, and eyes turning blue. It was evident that she had been in that state for a prolonged period before Louise had finally called for help, exposing the extent of Louise's neglect and indifference towards her daughter's life. Paramedics couldn't comprehend how a healthy child like Lexi could suddenly experience 2 life-threatening incidents within such a short period. During Lexi's 4-day hospital stay, Louise remained at the hospital, using the opportunity to send messages and explicit photos of herself to men and even flirt with hospital staff. After Lexi was discharged, the doctors could only conclude that a possible chest infection might have caused her symptoms. Lexi was brought back home, and Louise's actions continued to be callous and manipulative. CCTV footage from the hotel showed Louise and the kids returning home from the hospital, and her attitude even at this time clearly showed that she had no interest in caring for her children. She exploited her daughter's health issues to solicit money from men, claiming she needed financial assistance to care for Lexi. Louise's Google searches also became increasingly concerning as she looked up methods of self-harming and information about resuscitation and death. It became evident that she was researching ways to kill her daughter while making it appear as an accident. Investigators had gone through the searches she made on January 2nd and 4th, and over time, Louise's Google searches became more specific, focusing on the timing of calling emergency services after causing a person's death. She had even searched how long a body would take to turn blue from suffocation. This revealed her intention to ensure that she could still dial 999 after murdering her daughter, but not so early that she could be revived. Despite her heinous intentions, Louise continued to deceive men by fabricating her daughter's health condition, claiming that she was dying from a deadly flu. It seemed that her lack of empathy and the extent to which she was willing to manipulate others for her own twisted purposes knew no bounds. On January 14, 2018, The tragic incident unfolded when Lexi and Scarlet had visited Louise's sister, Karen. After returning home at 6 p.m., Lexi's health suddenly deteriorated again. Louise called 999, claiming her daughter was unconscious and not breathing. When paramedics arrived, they found Lexi unresponsive, with signs of rigor mortis, indicating she had likely been dead for several hours before the emergency call. Despite their best efforts, Lexi was pronounced dead at the scene. Despite the heartbreaking loss of her daughter, Louise continued her manipulative behavior. It was found out that she had accepted 41 friend requests on her dating app the very next day and exploited Lexi's death to solicit money from men. She even set up a GoFundMe account for her daughter's funeral, potentially using the donations for her personal gain. Her insincere Facebook post about Lexi further highlighted her lack of genuine grief. In the days following Lexi's death, Louise was seen laughing and joking with friends, even at her daughter's funeral. But this didn't stop there. Scarlet wasn't any different from Lexi to her mother and was also a burden to her. At the funeral, Louise's mother appeared in her life after Lexi's death, offering to help plan the funeral. Concerned, Louise allegedly mentioned that Scarlet might meet the same fate as Lexi, but no one reported her suspicious behavior to the authorities. On February 1st, just 18 days later, her words came true. Louise and Scarlet stayed in a hotel room, and despite Scarlet being healthy, her condition suddenly deteriorated. Louise messaged the men she was seeing, asking for £30 to cover petrol costs for taking Scarlet to the hospital. These men urged her to call an ambulance, but Louise only wanted attention and money. At 9:50 p.m., Louise left the hotel with Scarlet, but she didn't rush to the hospital. Instead, she drove around town taking her time and acting nonchalant, as if her daughter's life wasn't in danger. Surveillance footage at traffic stops at Hill Morton showed her driving around the city with no intention of reaching out to the helplines. She pulled into a gas station where surveillance cameras caught her. In the footage, we can see Louise taking her sweet time with her daughter fighting at death's door in the car. No concern or urgency can be seen in her face or behavior. Eventually, 30 minutes later, she pulled into a shopping center where she dialed 111. For people outside the UK, 111 is the non-emergency helpline while 999 is the emergency helpline number, and she still chose to dial 111. By the time the paramedics arrived, Scarlet was found dead and lifeless. It was again discovered that the child had been dead for a few hours before Louise had called for help. The doctors found that the death was consistent with deliberate airway obstruction, and Louise again showed little concern at the sudden and unexplained death. Doctors could not find any natural reason why either of the children would have died in such a manner. Meanwhile, when asked by the paramedics, Louise claimed that Scarlet had the flu. In both Lexi and Scarlet's cases, forensic experts conducted extensive post-mortem examinations. It was revealed that their deaths were intentional and not accidents. Lexi died from the deliberate obstruction of her airways. Examiners had found marks on her nose, indicating her nose was held shut, and she had scratch marks on her neck, suggesting she was fighting her mother's hands as Louise suffocated her. In Scarlet's case, the 17-month-old died from the obstruction of her airways as well. She had bruising around her neck and head, damage to her neck muscles, and bleeding in her lungs. Some of Scarlet's blood was also found on the pillow of the hotel room where she had died. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Louise had never admitted to her actions or shown remorse. Although there was not enough evidence to formally arrest her at the time, investigators continued to pursue the case, knowing that Louise was responsible for the murders of these innocent children. So nearly a year later, in January 2019, police finally gathered enough evidence to bring charges against her for the murders of her two children. And on the 20th of March 2019, Louise was arrested. In August of 2019, her trial began, and she pleaded not guilty. Overwhelming evidence was presented against her, including her chat history on dating apps, her neglectful behavior towards her children, and the results of the post-mortem examinations. On August 3, 2019, the jury found her guilty. Louise Porton was ultimately sentenced to 32 years in prison. However, many believe this sentence is insufficient, considering her young age at the time of sentencing, being only 23 years old. There are concerns that she might be released early if she behaves well in prison. During the trial, she showed no remorse and was emotionless. She just stood there without any guilt for murdering her own children. While speculations abound, the motive behind Louise's actions remains unclear. Despite undergoing a mental health assessment, no diagnoses were made, and she was deemed to be of sound mind at the time of the murders. The prevailing theory is that Louise saw her children as burdens, especially in relation to her immoral life, and thus decided to eliminate them. The aftermath of this case left everyone connected to it devastated. Louise's mother, Sharon Porton, fell into a deep depression, feeling she could have done more to help her two young granddaughters. Tragically, on February 4, 2020, she was found dead in her residence, having taken her own life at the age of 40. Also, the girl's father, Chris, experienced intense anguish. He expressed regret and frustration, feeling he could have done more to pursue custody when the opportunity arose. Now, the sorrow of never having met his 17-month-old daughter, Scarlet, consumes his every thought, even 18 months after the girls' deaths. In remembrance of the victims, Lexi Draper and Scarlet Vaughn are described as two sweet girls with infectious smiles and vibrant personalities. A white horse-drawn carriage adorned with purple was arranged to transport them to their final resting place. Their untimely deaths cut short lives that held endless promise. On the quiet autumn night of October 31, 1991, in Tyler, Texas, as the fall season settled in, the clock struck 2 a.m. The peaceful neighborhood of 29th Street was deep in slumber, except for a small framed house nestled at the corner, unaware that it was about to become a scene of horror. 8-year-old Chad Choice lay in his bed, lost in dreams, when an intruder silently invaded the house, snatching him away into the darkness of the night. Initially deemed a runaway incident due to lack of evidence, the case transformed into a nightmare for investigators once the crucial 48-hour window passed without any sign of who might have had the means to silently infiltrate Chad's home, spiriting him away without a trace. But the pivotal question remains: would Chad ever reunite with his family and return home? This city, named after the 10th President of the United States, John Tyler, stands as the largest in northeastern Texas, often referred to as the Rose Capital or Rose City. Tyler earned its reputation due to its extensive history of rose production, cultivation, and processing. Each October, the city welcomes thousands of tourists. However, the October of 1991 took a dark turn as Chad Choice mysteriously vanished without a trace, casting a shadow over the usually vibrant atmosphere. Ernest Chadwick Choice, known affectionately as Chad Choice, came into the world on April 26, 1983 in Texas. He was one of the cherished 4 children in the Choice household, a beautiful soul deeply adored by his family, particularly his mother, Karen Elaine Choice. Chad was an outgoing youngster surrounded by a large circle of friends with whom he frequently played. Moreover, his strong bond and affectionate relationship with his siblings were apparent as they often enjoyed quality time together. Chad's energetic and lively nature were further evident in his regular visits to the playground. Chad had an older sister named Angela Choice who fondly recalls that her little brother had a passion for riding bikes, scaling trees, and indulging in sports. Details about the remaining siblings were not made public. As a student at Mamie G. Griffin Elementary School, Chad's life was in its budding stage. At just 8 years old, he had his entire future ahead of him. However, fate often takes unforeseen turns, and tragically, Chad's destiny had already been sealed. The daily routine of the Choice family was shattered on the morning of October 31, 1991. Chad's mother, Karen, rose early and went to the church without waking her children, allowing them to continue sleeping. However, just a few minutes into her church service, Karen received a phone call. It was my daughter, and she asked me if Chad was with me, and I said no, I left him at home. And she said, well, we've looked everywhere and we can't find him. Karen rushed back home and began scouring the neighborhood for Chad. She sought assistance from her neighbors as well. Despite their collective efforts and their thorough search, Chad seemed to have vanished without a trace. It was as though he had disappeared into thin air. Now it was the police's turn to investigate the matter. During his initial inspection, he looked for signs of a break-in, but there were no indications of forced entry. Moreover, there were no signs of struggle inside the house. Based on the initial investigation, he began to consider the possibility that Chad might have run away from home. However, Karen firmly believed that her son had been kidnapped, and as the sun set and the day turned into a chilly night, the tension escalated into fear. Adding to her fear, the crucial 48-hour window had passed without any signs of him. During the interview, Chad's older sister Angela Choice provided a crucial piece of information to the detective. Her house keys had disappeared the day before, and she distinctly recalled leaving them by the back door of their residence. This revelation raised additional questions, suggesting the possibility of a planned kidnapping or something even more disturbing. 2 days after Chad's disappearance, a ransom note was discovered at the business of Chad's uncle, Greg Sterling, prompting the investigation to swiftly shift focus to a kidnapping scenario. As the family attempted to deliver the money at the Greyhound bus station as instructed, the kidnapper failed to appear. Several days later, Chad's mother received an anonymous phone call revealing that Chad's disappearance was linked to a family member's drug debt with a man named Paco. Investigators discovered that Greg Sterling owed money to 3 Colombian drug dealers in the area, Paco Jr. and Carlos, shedding light on a possible motive of Chad's abduction. However, the case still remained elusive. On the 1-year anniversary of Chad's disappearance, his mother, Karen Choice, discovered a note fluttering on her car windshield. The note asserted that Chad was still alive and demanded $6,000 for his safe return. This development reignited the investigation, filling the Choice family with hope and prayers of seeing Chad again. However, the case suffered a setback when the kidnapper failed to make contact once more, causing the investigation to stall again. Time was not on their side. Slowly, years were passing by, and Chad Choice's disappearance gradually evolved into a cold case. 4 years later, in October 1995, a grocery sack appeared on the Choice family's doorstep. Initially, it seemed like a regular grocery sack. However, upon opening it, it revealed something that would haunt Karen Choice for the rest of her life. Inside the package was a human skull. The skull was subsequently sent to the FBI for analysis. DNA samples from Choice's family were collected to compare with the skull's DNA to confirm its identity as Chad's. Despite these efforts, the results remained inconclusive. Later, the skull was sent to a university in Texas for further examination involving the expertise of forensic anthropology. The results came back, and unfortunately, Karen's worst fears were confirmed when forensic analysis revealed that the skull indeed belonged to Chad. Investigators grappled with the ruthless nature of a person who not only commits a crime but continues to torment the victim's family for years. Despite the struggle to comprehend this, Karen all along had an unshakable feeling in her heart that she would never see Chad alive again. All she could do now was pray for justice. While Chad Choice's case grew increasingly difficult to solve, another narrative unfolded in Smith County Jail in early 1996. A man named Patrick Horn was slated to be sentenced in federal court for credit union robberies and carjacking charges. He was also charged with the murder of James LeVisser, a fruit stand owner. It became evident that Horn was destined to spend the rest of his life behind bars or even face a potential death sentence. However, this man would soon become the center of Chad's murder case. It occurred when he mentioned Chad's Choices named to the police during his time behind bars. While this might have been part of a deal to reduce his prison sentence, to the investigators, it marked the first significant breakthrough they had made in the case so far. Was a resident in the Choice family's neighborhood and was friends with them. During his interview regarding Chad's case, Horn informed investigators that he knew the identity of Chad's killer. As per Horn's account, Chad was murdered by 2 local drug dealers, both Colombian nationals who were known by the street names Paco and Carlos. But the case was just about to get more twisted. After Horn made the statement, he received a package in his jail cell containing a small boy's leg bone, later confirmed through analysis to be Chad's. Horn asserted to the police that Paco and Carlos had sent the package. However, detectives couldn't shake the feeling that Horn was hiding something significant about the entire story. Despite repeated questioning by the detectives, Horn consistently maintained that he had no additional information apart from Paco and Carlos being the culprits. However, on May 31st, 1996, Horn finally disclosed something more. He tells us, he says, basically, I'm a victim in this crime as well. All I did was help bury the child. I didn't have any other involvement in it. And now they're threatening me because of my knowledge of what they did. And Horn then revealed the precise location where Chad was buried. Shortly afterward, he was escorted by the police to 401 Summerside in Tyler, which was Horn's own backyard. At 4 p.m. that same day, the detectives began digging and discovered Chad's skeletal remains along with 38 caliber shell casings. This moment marked a sudden turn in the investigation, with all suspicions now pointed directly at Patrick Horn. Without delay, in June 1996, the investigators hurried to Athens, a city in Texas. In a jail cell there, a man sat who was anticipated to be a crucial piece of the puzzle, important in solving the case once and for all. This man was none other than Patrick Horn's brother, Keaton Horn, who was facing charges of probation violation. The detective's suspicions were completely on point this time. With Keaton's statement, this case solidified into concrete evidence that Horn was indeed responsible for this notorious crime. Keaton admitted to digging up the bones or the lake bone and mailing it to Pat in jail and at Horn's direction, preparing the note to make it look like a threat from Paco and Carlos. An investigator explained, Horn's scheme to mislead investigators had ultimately unraveled. The solution to a seemingly unsolvable case was finally in hand. However, one question still lingered. Why did Horn kill Chad? On September 24, 1999, 8 years after Chad Choice's murder, the jury found Horn guilty in the Smith County Courthouse and sentenced him to death. However, even at the end of his chapter, Horn wouldn't cease tormenting the Choice household. Horn adamantly refused to sign the waiver allowing Chad's remains to be released to his family for a proper burial. Legally, he was required to agree to the release since the remains were evidence in his case. However, he insisted on retaining control over the fate of the 8-year-old Chad's remains. Horn did initially sign a waiver indicating his agreement to the release of Chad's Choice's remains. However, the document was somehow lost between his attorney's office and the judge's office. At first deemed a mere formality, District Judge Diane DeVasto announced in a December 1999 hearing that she would order the release of 30 exhibits, including Chad's skull and other bones to his family for burial, contingent upon Horn signing another waiver. Horn's appellate lawyer, Tommy Wilkinson of Greenville, sent the document to Horn via Federal Express, anticipating its return with the signature within a day. However, a month passed without any response from Horn. He did not reply to several letters from his attorney and ignored messages sent to him through officials at the Atlanta Federal Prison. Assistant District Attorney Ed Marty stated that if the remains were granted without the waiver, they might have to be exhumed sometime in the future. It remains uncertain when Horn eventually signed the waiver and if he did, when he signed it. Furthermore, Horn was 17 years old when he committed the murder of Chad. According to a ruling by the United States Supreme Court, anyone under the age of 18 cannot be executed. As a result, his sentence was commuted to life in prison. While this might not have been the exact form of justice Karen Choice desired, she could finally find solace in knowing that Patrick Horn would never walk free. In Garden Grove, Orange County, on May 21, 1987, a tragic event unfolded when 23-year-old Shannon Rose Lloyd was found lifeless in her rented bedroom. She had been a victim of severe assaults and was ultimately strangled. This case remained a mystery for years until 2003 when a significant breakthrough in forensic science connected Shannon's death to another disturbing case: the murder of 27-year-old Renee Cuevas in 1989. Renee's body was discovered not far from a Marine base in Orange County. The link between these two cases, despite being years apart and under different circumstances, marked a new chapter in the long-standing investigation. The authorities were able to connect these cases after such a long time through a breakthrough in forensic science that provided crucial evidence linking the two tragic events. Orange County, California is a vibrant and diverse region located in Southern California. It is comprised of 34 municipalities and is renowned for its stunning beaches, world-famous surfing spots, and popular amusement parks such as Disneyland and Knott's Berry Farm. As a result, it has become a highly sought-after tourist destination. With a population of over 3 million people, Orange County ranks as the 5th largest county in the United States. While it generally enjoys a reputation for safety, there are certain areas within the county that experience gang activity. Against this backdrop, the cold case of Shannon Rose Lloyd and Renee Cuevas remains unsolved, casting a shadow over this otherwise thriving county. Shannon Rose Lloyd, born in 1964, was a vibrant and adventurous 23-year-old residing in Garden Grove, California. Known for her tomboyish charm and zest for life, Shannon possessed a multifaceted personality. Her love for horses was just one aspect of her vibrant character. Although details about her work life and family background, including her parents' names, were not widely known, it was clear that Shannon's life story was still unfolding. Those who knew Shannon remembered her as a free-spirited wild child, always ready for an exciting adventure, spending time with her men embarking on a spontaneous journey with no predetermined destination. Shannon's brother, Tom Lloyd, shared her enthusiasm for life, contributing to the dynamic energy of their social circle. According to a close friend, Shannon was rumored to be a mother to a young son, revealing a tender side to her otherwise carefree nature. Her relationship with her boyfriend was a testament to love and patience. Despite Shannon's youthful energy and reluctance to settle down, the boyfriend's unwavering devotion to her was evident. He consistently made an effort to be by her side, demonstrating his deep care for her. Shannon's close-knit group of friends included Brian Schultz, John Beckman, and Roger Fillion. They were known for their strong bond, camaraderie, and shared love for fun and music. Renique Wavis, born in 1960, resided in Orange County, California at the age of 27. Her family held a deep affection for her, especially her grandmother, Mercedes, who lovingly referred to her as Amma. Rennie shared a close bond with her siblings Michael, Kelly, Victor, and her sister Marlene, enveloped in familial love. This love extended to her Aunt Amelia, who held a special place in Rennie's heart. Unfortunately, tragedy struck as all these beloved family members have since passed away. Rennie was a devoted mother to her son, Luis Ramirez, who bore a striking resemblance to her. Luis was the center of her world, bringing her immense pride and joy. She showered him with unconditional love, ensuring he always had little gifts, candies, toys, and clothes. In Luis's eyes, his mother was his everything. Renee possessed a striking physical beauty, with long brownish-red hair and fair, snow-white skin. Her smile, adorned with adorable dimples, radiated happiness. These same dimples were a charming trait passed on to Luis. Everyone around her could feel Renee's angelic presence. One unforgettable moment was when she excitedly shared her spiritual journey of being born again, her enthusiasm making her appear like a dancing angel. Sadly, this vibrant and beautiful woman's life was tragically cut short, leaving a void in the hearts of those who loved her. In 1987, Shannon Rose Lloyd, then 23 years old, rented a room in Northern Garden Grove. Her residence was situated in the 11,900 block of Donna Lane, a peaceful part of the neighborhood. The house was owned by 70-year-old Kazimar Bursic, who provided Shannon with accommodation. It was an ordinary dwelling in a typical Orange County suburb, where tranquility was expected in everyday life. However, on May 21st of that year, an unimaginable tragedy shattered the serenity of this community. Kazimar Bursic, Shannon's landlord, made a horrifying discovery. He found Shannon's lifeless body in her room, a sight that no one, including himself, was ever prepared to witness. Casimir, overwhelmed with shock and a sense of urgency, hurriedly made his way to a neighbor's house, desperately seeking assistance. His primary objective was to immediately contact the authorities and report the horrifying scene he had stumbled upon. The police were promptly summoned to the location, initiating a lengthy and intricate investigation into the untimely demise of Sean. This particular day marked a pivotal moment, not only for Shannon's loved ones, but also for the criminal history of Orange County. the tranquility of the neighborhood was forever disrupted by this tragic event. 2 years later, another heart-wrenching incident unfolded in Orange County. In the early hours of February 19, 1989, a disturbing discovery was made near the El Toro Marine Base along Lambert Road. It was there that the lifeless body of Renee Cuevas, a 27-year-old woman, was found. This grim revelation was made by an anonymous individual who, upon encountering such a distressing sight, promptly notified the police. The area surrounding the El Toro Marine Base, typically associated with the disciplined lives of military personnel, suddenly became the focal point of a criminal investigation. The peacefulness of the early morning was shattered by the flurry of police activity as they arrived to unravel the intricacies of this tragic incident. Renee's death, occurring just 2 years after Shannon's, added another layer of sorrow and enigma to the Orange County community. The close proximity of these two cases, both in terms of time and geography, gave rise to numerous questions and concerns. The serene and orderly atmosphere of the area was once again overshadowed by the darkness of an unresolved crime, leaving the community and Renee's loved ones in a state of shock and sorrow. Immediately following the discovery of Shannon Rose Lloyd's body, the police initiated an extensive investigation into her untimely demise. They soon uncovered the distressing details. Shannon had been brutally assaulted and strangled in her own bedroom. The revelation had a profound impact on the community, intensifying the already tragic nature of the event. Shannon, described by neighbors as an attractive, empathite woman, was known to be a mother and had a boyfriend who frequently visited her. However, there were occasional sightings of questionable individuals at her residence, adding complexity to the case and expanding the potential pool of people who may have been involved or had knowledge of her final moments. Interestingly, the police had been called to Shannon's residence on 3 separate occasions before, though the reasons behind these visits remained unclear. Furthermore, neighbors reported a high incidence of burglaries in the area during that time. Surprisingly, there was no evidence of forced entry into Shannon's house, and no belongings seemed to be missing. This lack of disturbance at the crime scene suggested that the perpetrator may have been familiar with Shannon or her home. Despite these details, the investigation reached a standstill, with no clear suspects or leads. Shannon Rose Lloyd's case went cold. When Renee Cuevas' body was discovered, the police immediately launched a parallel investigation to Shannon's case. The circumstances surrounding Renee's death bore a chilling resemblance to Shannon's. She had been brutally assaulted and strangled. This disturbing similarity indicated a possible pattern, raising concerns for both the investigators and the community. However, the investigation into Renee's death faced significant challenges. Like Shannon's case, there were no obvious leads or suspects to pursue. The lack of evidence and witnesses left the police with limited avenues for exploration. As a result, it became increasingly difficult to reconstruct the events leading up to Renee's tragic demise. Over time, the investigation lost momentum. The available clues led to dead ends, and the trail of the perpetrator went cold. In a surprising turn of events, a significant breakthrough occurred in 2003 for the cold cases of Shannon Rose Lloyd and Renee Cuevas. Law enforcement's persistence led to the reopening of Shannon's case nearly 2 decades after her death. With advancements in forensic technology, the DNA evidence from the crime scene was entered into CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System. This national database for DNA profiles offered hope in solving these long-standing mysteries. The CODIS results reveal a shocking truth. The DNA from Shannon's case matched that from Renee's murder, indicating the same person was responsible for both crimes. Despite this crucial evidence, the killer's identity remained unknown, requiring further investigation. The breakthrough finally came in 2021, when the DNA evidence from both cases underwent forensic genetic genealogy. This innovative method, combining DNA analysis with genealogical research, marked a new phase in the investigation. Through this detailed process, a potential suspect was identified. Reuben J. Smith, the perpetrator in the cases of Shannon Rose Lloyd and Renee Cuevas, was born on December 11, 1959, in Michigan. Despite his connections to the community in the 1980s, much of Smith's background, including his childhood, education, and personal life, remained a mystery. Even the identities of his parents were unknown, leaving gaps in his early years. In the 1990s, Smith relocated to Las Vegas, Nevada. Following the relocation to Las Vegas, Nevada, Reuben J. Smith's criminal activities eventually led to his arrest in July of 1998. He was taken into custody by the police on charges of inhumane assault and attempted murder of a woman. This arrest marked a pivotal moment as it brought Smith's actions under legal scrutiny. Despite the dismissal of the charges against him, Smith tragically took his own life in November of 1999 using a firearm in Las Vegas. This sudden end to his life left many questions unanswered. However, through DNA evidence obtained from Smith's previous arrest, a crucial link was established. The DNA profile from Smith matched the male DNA found at the crime scenes of Shannon Lloyd and Renee Cuevas, revealing the truth. Reuben J. Smith was the perpetrator behind the murders of both women. The confirmation of Smith's involvement in these crimes brought closure to the long-standing mystery surrounding their deaths. The resolution of the cold cases of Shannon Rose Lloyd and Renee Cuevas provided a deep sense of closure to their families, who had endured years of unanswered questions and unresolved grief. Yellen DeLue, Rennie's cousin, came forward to express sincere gratitude towards the police and all those involved in the investigation. Additionally, Garden Grove Police Chief Amir El Farah issued a statement. As we conclude the investigation into the unsolved cases of Shannon Rose Lloyd and Rennie Cuevas, two significant inquiries arise. Is there any possibility of a different approach that could have expedited the resolution of these cases? And what valuable insights can we extract from their narratives to assist forthcoming investigations? On February 11, 2010, a truck driver was driving through the Greensburg, Pennsylvania area. Even though the empty streets on that chilly morning were perfect for a fast delivery, his eyes caught the attention of something unusual. Stopping by the Greensburg Salem Middle School, the driver noticed a suspiciously tipped over trash can. While it would have been easier to just mind his business and drive past, curiosity got the better of the man, and he stumbled upon something terrifying. Inside the trash can was a badly mangled and bloody corpse of a woman. While he couldn't make sense of what he was seeing, he immediately dialed 911, and the police rushed to the scene to inspect the remains of what seemed like a nightmarish act. On their arrival, the cops saw the body haphazardly stuffed into the dumpster with several knife stab wounds. Besides, they shockingly discovered that the woman had several bruises on her, indicating she was badly beaten by her attacker before they had killed her. The corpse also looked mysteriously out of place in a dumpster outside a middle school, suggesting that it was not the site of the murder, but the site of disposal. While searching the battered body of the woman, the police found a note in the back pocket of her pants. The condition of the body completely betrayed the contents of the note, and the only shred of truth it carried was the name of the unfortunate victim, Jennifer. What really happened to this woman? How horrifying were her final moments before she ended up getting killed in such a terrible manner? A little more scrutiny enabled the cops to track down the parents of the now deceased Jennifer Daughtry, who were then called in to identify her body. The parents, Richard and Denise Daughtry, were shocked out of their wits on seeing that their sweet daughter was taken away from them in such a vicious manner. They informed the police that Jennifer was 30 years old. However, her intellectual and psychological challenges had limited her mental age to that of a 12 to 14-year-old girl. Born on November 8, 1979 in Latrobe of Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania, Jennifer was a bright soul who had a very warm and welcoming vibe. While she got bullied by several kids in her school days because of her mental challenges, her personality allowed her to befriend several likable companions. On that fateful day, while talking to Jennifer's parents, the cops surprisingly came to learn that she was a resident of Mount Pleasant. This made them question what she was doing in Greensburg and who really took her life. The Daughtries told the police that their girl regularly visited Greensburg for her medical appointments. She was also taking life skill lessons at the West Place Clubhouse in Greensburg, which also involved getting trained to become a mechanic. This time, however, she had arrived in the city to meet a new group of friends for a sleepover. Jennifer had met this group of 6 people via Angela Marinucci, whom she bumped into while taking her lessons at the West Place Clubhouse. Both girls hit it off very well, and Angela introduced Jennifer to her friends, Ricky Smyrns, Melvin Knight, Amber Menninger, Robert Masters, and Peggy Miller. While Jennifer had been battling with mental challenges, surprisingly, she wasn't alone anymore. Everyone in the new gang of friends had their own cognitive challenges, and so they stuck close to each other. Many of them had developed these issues because of bad childhoods, trampled with negative experiences. Such relatable issues helped Jennifer to quickly bond with the group and be happy in the company of others like her, who were also trying to live despite their psychological struggles. Jennifer's parents showed complete trust in this new group of friends since they had observed that their daughter was very happy with them. Before going out on February 10, 2010, Jennifer had left a note for her mother, saying that she would be back home after the sleepover by the next day afternoon. In fact, she even mentioned the contact details of all 6 friends to reach out to in case of any unforeseen emergencies. Sadly, these words turned out to be her last bits of communication with her parents and the first lead in the investigation of her murder. According to the doctor, something must have happened after the time Jennifer got off the bus so as to reach the house where the fun getaway was planned. The police decided to meet this group in good faith and ask if they knew anything about this gruesome murder. But little did they know that they would discover something completely sinister and unbelievable. From the outside, the house where Jennifer was supposed to meet her friends seemed rather dull and ordinary. It still had some lights on its exterior, suggesting that the Christmas decorations hadn't been taken off. But when the cops walked in through the door, they discovered that the house, which adorned a semi-festive look, was plagued with a stench of gore and blood. The house occupied by Jennifer's friends turned out to be the crime scene where she was badly beaten and killed, with almost every corner of the house reeking of the grim nature of the incident. The cops apprehended all 6 in the group, who didn't try very hard to deny what had happened in the face of all the glaring evidence in the house. While just a glimpse of Jennifer's body screamed torture, the evidence found in the house of the Greensburg 6 confirmed that she was badly humiliated before being killed. In the house, the police found all the objects that were used to hurt the helpless Jennifer, along with the murder weapon, which was a kitchen knife that eventually ended her final breath. The cops relentlessly questioned everyone and asked them what happened during the night of the sleepover on February 10, 2010. The statements from the Greenberg 6 revealed that the sleepover was just a trap for Jennifer, and that her punishment was pre-planned instead of being something accidental. They also learned that the mastermind behind this heinous crime was none other than the youngest of them all, Angela Marinucci, who was also Jennifer's close friend. Just when Jennifer crossed their doorstep, the group put their plans into action, and they suddenly began hitting her. Jennifer was quite confused at the time, since this wasn't the welcome she was expecting. Why did this new group of friends she had trusted so much suddenly turn hostile? What sick intentions might have motivated these 6 people to mercilessly hurt a mentally challenged friend and eventually take her life? Jennifer's phone and purse were immediately confiscated by the group, who began the grueling torture session that would go on for 36 long hours. They tore her purse and poured several fluids into it. Angela and Amber initiated the physical assault and beat Jennifer up with several objects. They took turns as they bruised her with several items, including a sturdy pair of crutches, a vacuum cleaner hose, a towel bar, and a 2-liter lemonade bottle. The duo was later joined by the others who kicked Jennifer repeatedly, crushing her belly and her chest. The badly bruised Jennifer was also forced to gulp down several undrinkable fluids like cooking oil, nail polish, detergent, urine, and even made-to-eat cheese. All of these were poured onto her head, followed by oatmeal and spices. Jennifer retaliated against the assaults, as she tried to throw her limbs around to attack her assailants. Unfortunately, Jennifer ended up choosing the wrong target by hitting Amber hard in the stomach. The group said that Amber was pregnant and escalated their assault on Jennifer after tying her with Christmas lights and decorations to prevent her from standing up to them again. The group shaved Jennifer's head and smeared her face with nail polish while continuing to thrash her. Unable to fight, Jennifer tried begging her attackers for mercy. The group neither stopped nor explained while she became the victim of their sadism. Instead, Melvin Knight took off Jennifer's clothes and forced himself on the heavily bruised victim, while everyone else watched. After Melvin was done, They forced Jennifer into the bathroom to have a shower, citing the trouble they were having with her stench. While Jennifer thought that her captors were done with her, you would discover next that she couldn't have been more wrong. The thrashing instantly resumed, and Jennifer's mini-illusion was instantly shattered. But things did come to a stop afterwards, since the Greensburg Six got bored of constantly beating Jennifer to a pulp. The group then decided to vote to either let Jennifer go on the expectation that she would remain quiet or to kill her and get rid of her body. Jennifer begged her supposed friends to set her free. But the next morning, February 11th, she learned that all six had unanimously voted to end her life. Before killing her, the group somehow thought that making Jennifer write a no would shield them whenever her body was found. For reasons unknown, the group made Jennifer take several antibiotics, painkillers, and sleeping pills before Ricky Smerms asked Melvin to stab her in the chest. This could either be due to an unexpected return of their conscience or an attempt to prolong Jennifer's suffering using medicines. The latter stands more probable since they didn't spare the life of the already tortured Jennifer. Thus, any consideration of the Greensburg Six empathy towards their unfortunate victim was completely out of the question. Instead, Melvin plunged the knife into Jennifer's body thrice, striking her chest and her throat. He later checked on her to find that she was still alive and slashed her wrist to end Jennifer's life. The group didn't immediately dispose of Jennifer's body. Angela Marinucci asked the group to prop the dead body up and wrap it in Christmas lighting to get a dazzling display of their monstrosity. But when the damaged Christmas lights didn't work, the frustrated group stuffed her body in a trash can where it was eventually found. All of this clearly showcased that none of the six had any form of remorse over their actions. But what really made them carry out this torture come murder? After learning of such a horrifying account, cops cracked down hard on everyone to find out why they made Jennifer suffer so much. The Greensburg Six revealed that Jennifer had developed a crush on Ricky, who was Angela's boyfriend at the time. Moreover, Angela once caught Ricky secretly speaking with Jennifer over the phone. This made her furious with jealousy, following which she decided to punish her new friend for crossing the line and hatched a plan with Amber. Cops found that this flow of romance wasn't one way, as Ricky later revealed that he loved Jennifer as well. Both had confessed their love to each other and had also been intimate on a few occasions behind Angela's back. This really made the detectives think as to why Ricky participated, or even approved of whatever happened with Jennifer. Especially, he could have avoided everything by simply warning Jennifer and asking her not to come for the sleepover. The confession from the other members of the Greensburg Six, especially Peggy Miller and Robert Masters, revealed that Angela was a very dangerous woman and they were very afraid of her. Peggy and Robert also said they didn't participate in any of the violence and were willing to cooperate with the police and get a plea deal in court. However, the fear analogy didn't stand true for everyone, especially Melvin Knight, who seemed to have enjoyed torturing and assaulting Jennifer the most. Nevertheless, when things came down to the point for each member to vote, none of them voted to let Jennifer live, despite already having made her go through a hellish nightmare. However, the police now had what they needed to get justice for Jennifer Daughtry. The hearing for the case began on November 3, 2010, revealing that Angela, Ricky, and Jennifer had a very complex love triangle, with Ricky being at the center of it all. Angela had actually overheard Ricky speaking with Jennifer when she had heard him saying that he loved her and wanted to marry her. This made Angela fume with rage since she had been his girlfriend for several years. The state of Pennsylvania had never seen a heinous and violent crime of this degree. On August 3, 2011, when giving the verdict, the court found the charges against Angela serious enough for death penalty. But since she was only 17 at the time of the incident, she ended up receiving life imprisonment without parole for first-degree murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy to commit murder. Due to certain unrelated developments, her sentence saw some revisions, with the final order coming in May 2022. Angela is now undergoing her sentence and would be eligible for parole only in 2070. Ricky Smerns and Melvin Knight, however, received the death penalty. On February 28, 2013 and April 12, 2012, respectively. Knight later challenged his sentence in September 2014, stating that the jury was prejudiced towards him. But the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania upheld his sentence twice. Speaking about her judgment on Knight, Pennsylvania Supreme Court's Chief Justice, Todd, said that the jury was not biased in its judgment to give the death penalty to Melvin Knight. She instead noted that the decision was made after a thorough examination of a large pool of evidence which proved Knight and the rest of the Greensburg Six, having subjected Jennifer, a mentally challenged woman, to several forms of assault and torture, eventually killing her. Amber Menninger pled guilty to third-degree murder, conspiracy, and kidnapping, though she had initially tried to get some relief citing her pregnancy. Once she found out she could be facing the death penalty, she chose to cooperate as a witness and received a sentence of 40 to 80 years in prison on December 4, 2013. Prior to the trial, Peggy Miller and Robert Masters had already agreed to testify as witnesses. During the trial, Robert revealed that he had almost helped Jennifer in escaping and also returned her clothes while Melvin and Ricky were outside the house. But they returned before Jennifer could flee from the place. The court, however, noted that neither Peggy nor Roberts chose to inform the police of what happened, and only came forward as witnesses to get plea deals. Although they didn't participate in any of the violence, they did help in keeping Jennifer hostage and also voted to kill her. Peggy received a sentence of 35 to 74 years and Robert got a sentence of 30 to 70 years on March 17, 2014. The accounts of Peggy and Roberts also ushered in the need for a law in Pennsylvania to charge anybody witnessing a violent crime and withholding the information from the police with third-degree murder. This law was proposed by Senator Kim Ward in 2012, and he tabled the proposal as Jennifer's Law. Speaking at the trial of the murderers of her sister, Joy Buckholder said, "Jennifer was exploited. Her kindness and her handicap made her very vulnerable. She did not have a single mean bone in her body." Jennifer's family also took the blame of their beloved's murder on themselves, since they thought they shouldn't have left Jennifer alone, despite knowing that she needed the love, help, and support of someone close at almost all times. The horrifying and gruesome end of Jennifer Daughtry really shook one and all concerned from within. Jennifer's parents were especially devastated to know that their daughter was tortured, assaulted, murdered, and hoisted as a trophy in cold blood. To add to their grief, she was killed by the very people she trusted and someone whom she had fallen in love with. The Daughtrys had been thinking of getting Jennifer a place of her own in Greensburg, where she could live more independently with a network of her reliable friends by her side. While the sleepover was a litmus test for such hopes of independence and companionship, the end result turned bloody red. The murder of Jennifer Daughtry is still noted as one of the most horrifying true crime stories out there. Notably, evidence draws a loose correlation between killers and the mental issues they face. But do you think that the Greensburg Six did what they did because of their mental challenges? Or were they capable of this cold-blooded torture-cum-murder all along? On Saturday, May 4th, 2019, the day started like any other for Iman Nasser, a 17-year-old from Manchester, England. Recently becoming a new mother, she was still adjusting to this exciting phase of her life. However, the day took an unexpected turn when her ex-boyfriend and the father of her baby, 17-year-old Rhett Kardashaw, called to inform her that he was coming to visit. Despite their breakup and Rhett's involvement with a new girl named Sarah Muhammad, arrival of their baby had brought them closer again. Shortly after the call, Rhett arrived at Iron Man's room and the ex-lovers engaged in an intimate encounter. However, within minutes Rhett suddenly and violently stabbed a man multiple times. The question arises, what could have triggered Rhett's sudden outburst of violence? Was he under the influence of drugs? Or was there a more terrifying reason behind his actions? It is important to note that Manchester, where this tragic incident took place, is a major city in the Greater Manchester area with a population of 552,000 as of 2021. The city is renowned for its football clubs, Manchester United and Manchester City, attracting fans from around the world. While the crime rate in Greater Manchester was 98.2 per 1,000 people in 2019, it is also a diverse and welcoming city with a rich historical heritage and esteemed universities. Iman Nasser, born in 2002 in Openshaw, Manchester, lived in this city with her family. Growing up in a close-knit family with 2 sisters and 2 brothers, Iman's upbringing was deeply rooted in her Islamic faith. Her family regularly attended the local mosque, instilling a strong sense of faith in her from a young age. Aman's personality radiated through her intelligence and charisma, excelling both academically and socially. She easily made friends and was a dedicated sister to her siblings. Her love for babies was so profound that she aspired to become a midwife in the future. However, in 2013, Aman's life took a different path when she met Rick Cartshaw, her classmate at Manchester Academy. Initially, their relationship seemed caring and protective, but over time, Rhett's behavior became controlling and abusive. As Aman's relationship with Rhett deteriorated, his behavior became increasingly abusive. He would engage in flirtations with other girls, cheat on her, lie to her, and even resort to physical violence whenever she questioned him. As a result, Aman's once vibrant social life began to fade away. She became withdrawn and isolated, afraid of upsetting Rhett, but also fearful of leaving him. Aman's friends and family noticed the distressing change in her behavior, but unfortunately, they were unable to separate the couple. Despite these challenges, Aman remained dedicated to her studies and managed to earn good grades in high school. She had plans to attend college, hoping for a fresh start away from the toxic relationship. However, at the age of 16, during her junior year of high school, Aman's situation became even more complicated when she discovered that she was pregnant with Rhett's child. This news clashed with her family's traditional expectations, and her mother was disappointed and angry. Initially, Aman's decision to keep the baby was met with resistance, but eventually her family accepted her choice and offered their support. At first, Rhett appeared to be happy about the pregnancy and assured Aman that they would work things out. However, his initial excitement quickly faded, and he reverted back to his old ways as the pregnancy progressed. Aman found herself torn between her loyalty to Rhett and her love for her unborn child. Unbeknownst to Aman, Rhett had started a relationship with another student named Sarah Muhammad. Sarah had always desired Rhett, so when he asked her out, she saw it as an opportunity. However, upon learning of Aman's pregnancy, Sarah's jealousy transformed into a vicious rage. Torn between the two women, Rhett ultimately chose Sarah, leaving Aman to face her pregnancy alone. Aman struggled with the breakup, but the arrival of her baby boy, Keenan, gave her strength. In March 2019, she gave birth to a healthy child, despite Rhett's absence during the birth and his continued emotional distance. However, the presence of their child only fueled Sarah's rage and jealousy. She found it unbearable that Rhett still had a connection through their baby, and her resentment reached toxic new heights. Meanwhile, Aman was completely engrossed in taking care of her baby, oblivious to the ominous presence lurking in the shadows. Despite no longer being in a romantic relationship, Aman and Rhett managed to maintain a friendship and frequently cross paths. However, when Sarah discovered their continued connection, she was filled with anger and promptly ended her relationship with Rhett. Unwilling to let go, Rhett was determined to salvage their bond and arrange a lunch meeting with Sarah on Friday, May 3, 2019, hoping to convince her to stay with him. The following day, on May 4, 2019, 17-year-old Rhett visited Aman's house while her mother was away, with Sarah waiting outside. Initially, Rhett appeared friendly as he caught up with Aman and reminisced about old times. However, his demeanor suddenly shifted. He retrieved a large kitchen knife from his bag and launched a vicious attack on Aman. A struggle ensued, but Aman summoned her strength and managed to push him away, fleeing into the garden. Rhett relentlessly pursued her, continuing the assault by brazenly stabbing her in the face, neck, armpit, and back 3 times. As Aman lay bleeding and fighting for her life, Rhett fled the scene and rendered vows with Sarah. The two embraced, engaged in conversation, and swiftly returned to Sarah's residence. Little did they anticipate that Aman would survive. One of her brothers had witnessed her bleeding in the garden and rushed her to the hospital. Rhett's escape was short-lived as the police apprehended him at a bus stop, clutching 2 bags containing blood-stained clothing and a bloody knife. Now in custody, Rhett faced intense questioning from the authorities. Through his responses and their subsequent investigation, the police pieced together the sequence of events. The tragic incident was set in motion during Rhett and Sarah's lunch meeting on Friday, May 3, 2019. Sarah's fury over Rhett's continued involvement with Amon led her to demand the ultimate proof of his love and commitment, the murder of Amon. She wanted him to go to great lengths to win back her affection. Rhett's phone records indicated that following the meeting, he had conducted online searches regarding asphyxiation and the potential penalties for murder. The investigation uncovered that Sarah had persistently pressured Rhett, bombarding him with numerous text messages instructing him to document his actions and share the footage as proof. Fortunately for a man, Rhett's attempts at executing the plan have failed, and her family promptly rushed her to the hospital. A man underwent multiple surgeries and remained hospitalized for a duration of 4 days, as she had sustained severe injuries from a total of 15 stab wounds. The doctors confirmed that considering the severity of the assault, she was incredibly fortunate to have survived. During the police interrogation, a man recounted that Rhett had posed disturbing questions during his visit on that fateful day. He inquired whether she would be willing to end her own life for him, if he should end hers, and how he should go about it. Rhett confessed to a man that he was being coerced into terminating her life, claiming that failure to comply could result in harm to this family. He even requested her assistance in faking a strangulation, suggesting that she apply makeup to her neck to simulate the appearance of a choke mark, which he intended to photograph. Reluctantly, Iman agreed and proceeded to apply the makeup, closing her eyes as he captured the staged image. However, upon opening her eyes, she was met with a horrifying sight. Rhett holding a large kitchen knife. Filled with fear, Iman attempted to dial the emergency services, but he forcefully prevented her from doing so. Fearing for her life, she implored him to leave. A struggle ensued, and summoning her strength, a man managed to escape from the room and flee into the garden. It was there that Rhett ultimately attacked her with the knife, inflicting over 15 stab wounds to her head, neck, and back. Following the savage assault, Rhett swiftly fled the scene, having prepared a change of clothes and sneakers to discard the blood-stained attire he had worn during the attack, highlighting the extent of his premeditation. He was apprehended. The items he had in his possession included a kitchen knife, a green sports bag, and clothing and sneakers stained with blood. Additionally, there was an open pack of wipes, some of which had been used, presumably for cleaning the knife. Shortly after, 17-year-old Sarah Muhammad was arrested. Her phone was seized, revealing messages urging Rhett to be cautious about leaving behind any DNA evidence, as it could lead to imprisonment. Furthermore, the messages requested that he record the attacks so that she could view it before deleting the evidence and disposing of the phone. The detectives also discovered that while Sarah was waiting outside Amon's house, she bombarded Rhett with over 50 texts, actively encouraging his actions. Among these messages, one stood out, stating, "Why are you taking so long? Hurry up and do it." What followed were a series of chilling messages that exposed the dark side of Rhett and Sarah's relationship. In response to Sarah, Rhett wrote, "I did it to prove I love you. There was no other way to keep you." Sarah replied, "I know there wasn't. I'm going to protect you at all costs." Shockingly, she even offered to assist him in obtaining a new identity, assuring him, "I would have done the same for you." Investigators were appalled that high school teenagers could harbor such sinister thoughts. Rhett Carty Shaw was charged with attempted murder and possession of a dangerous weapon, while his girlfriend, Sarah Muhammad, was charged with intentionally encouraging and assisting in the commission of murder. Initially, Rhett was also charged with assault based on the hospital's examination of Amon, but this charge was dropped when Amon confirmed that it was consensual. Prior to the trial, Sarah Muhammad changed her name to Cairo Mori Akihiro. The trial took place in December 2019 at Manchester Crown Court, where a courageous Amin Nasser confronted her attackers as she provided her testimony recounting how the incident unfolded. On that fateful day, Amin received a phone call from Rhett informing her that he was en route to her residence. At that moment, she was sound asleep inside the house while her sisters were busy preparing food in the kitchen. Meanwhile, her mother had stepped out with her newborn baby. When Rhett arrived at her doorstep, he carried a green plastic bag and wore black gloves. Inside the bag, there lay a black Adidas hoodie and matching trousers. Rhett claimed that his intention was to donate these clothes to charity, but a man expressed her desire to examine them, which sparked an argument between them. Subsequently, when she retreated to her room, Rhett followed her and settled into the gaming chair, drawing closer to her. A man testified in court that he began touching her thighs and chest, kissing her neck, nose, and face, almost forcing himself upon her. Although she felt angered by his behavior, she eventually succumbed, and the two engaged in intimate relations within her bedroom. Later, their conversation took a disturbing turn as Rhett broached the topic of her demise. According to a man, Rhett gazed into the mirror and made unsettling remarks, including threats towards his own family. Frightened, she called out to her sister, but Rhett swiftly silenced her, assuring her that he had no harmful intentions. Suddenly, the tone of their conversation shifted once Morris's phone incessantly beat with a barrage of text messages. He emphasized the seriousness of his threats. In response, a man threatened to contact someone unless he revealed the contents of the messages. However, Rhett attempted to conceal the messages from her as he perused them. These messages, sent by Kira Mori, also known as Sarah, were the final catalyst. The situation escalated from emotional distress to outright violence as Rhett launched an attack on Iman with a knife. Iman also provided insights into Kira Mori's life, describing her as a demonic girl with a fascination for dark and gothic themes. She labeled Kira Mori as a manipulative and delusional teenager who could not accept that Iman had been involved with Rhett prior to her. Iman believed that Kira Mori had been stalking her on social media, which contributed to her feelings of insecurity. Amanda's testimony was filled with intense emotions as she recounted the harrowing experience she had endured. She described how her life had been completely transformed, struggling to find a sense of safety and even sleep at night. The daunting task of rebuilding her life now forced her to become a stay-at-home parent, solely responsible for caring for her child. Shockingly, Amand did not receive any form of apology from the perpetrators, which deeply affected her. She expressed her frustration, highlighting that no one had considered the fact that her son was only 2 months old at the time, and she had recently undergone a C-section at 35 weeks. Despite her powerful testimony, Kira Mori, also known as Sarah, disagreed with the court's account of the events. She maintained her innocence, claiming that she believed Rhett was planning to end his relationship with a man. Kira Mori explained her messages as an attempt to have their breakup recorded on his phone as evidence of their separation. However, her explanation failed to sway anyone. Throughout the court proceedings, Kira Mori was observed smiling and even laughing, displaying a complete lack of remorse. Both Rhett and Kira Mori, who were 17 years old at the time of the trial, were ultimately found guilty of all charges. During the sentencing, Judge Alan Conrad Keefe C. highlighted the disturbingly narcissistic behaviors exhibited by Rhett and Kira Mori, expressing disappointment in Kira Mori's actions. The judge emphasized that the victim was an innocent girl whom Kira Mori had never even met and who had caused her no harm. Even the defense team expressed profound sadness over the tragic nature of the case, underscoring how the incomprehensible actions of these two teenagers had irreversibly damaged their own futures. Initially, the media was prohibited from disclosing their names due to their age. However, following their conviction and in response to requests from the press, Judge Alan Conrad Keefe C. ordered that their identities be made public. Aman Nasser also chose to waive her anonymity rights, as she believed it was crucial for her story to be shared. On Friday, December 20th, 2019, Rhett Carty Shaw was sentenced to 16 years in prison for attempted murder and possession of an offensive weapon. Kira Mori Akihiro, previously known as Sarah Muhammad, has been sentenced to 16 years in prison for her involvement in encouraging and assisting a person to commit murder. Following the conviction of the teenagers, Detective Inspector Jennifer Tattersall from Greater Manchester Police commended Iman's bravery and determination. She acknowledged the significant impact the traumatic event had had on the young woman who was left in a serious condition and praised her for coming forward to assist the police during the investigation. Aman Nasser expressed her satisfaction with the outcome of the trial, stating that she achieved the results she desired. She also expressed gratitude towards the police for their assistance and support, and voiced her hope for a brighter future. Despite justice being served, Ammon faces numerous challenges ahead. The incident has profoundly affected her perspective on life, leaving her in constant fear of potential harm. She disclosed that her family had relocated from Openshaw due to the traumatic incident and her deteriorating mental health. Ammon now struggles to trust others and relies on medication to cope with the lingering effects of her ordeal. Although Ammon's journey to recovery will be difficult, she remains determined to rebuild her life for the sake of her child. Her experience with a seemingly loving partner who turned violent serves as a reminder of the importance of vigilance and recognizing warning signs in relationships. As for the adequacy of the sentence given to Rhett and Cairo Mori, it is a matter open to interpretation and discussion. On the morning of December 10, 2017, Gary Bentley, a 33-year-old resident of Campbellsburg, Kentucky, woke up bright and early along with his lovely wife, Tasha, who was 34 years old, and their 4-year-old son, Connor. Despite being married for 5 blissful years, Tasha had recently lost her job, which had left her feeling sad and miserable. The stress of finding a new job had taken a toll on her. However, on that particular day, Tasha returned from work in the evening only to discover that Gary had not been answering her calls or messages. As she approached their house, she noticed the garage door wide open and an eerie silence enveloping the premises. A sense of fear washed over Tasha as she realized that something was amiss. What had happened to Gary? Had he vanished without a trace? Or was there a more troubling explanation for his absence? Campbellsburg, situated in Henry County, Kentucky, is a charming community adorned with farmhouse-style homes. Despite its tranquil ambience, it is conveniently located just 40 miles away from the bustling city of Louisville, offering its residents easy access to urban amenities. As of 2020, the population of Campbellsburg stood at 836, steadily increasing over the past 2 decades. The town is part of the Louisville metropolitan area, renowned for its cultural landmarks and icons. Notably, it is the hometown of the legendary boxer, Muhammad Ali, and serves as the venue for the prestigious Kentucky Derby. Additionally, Campbellsburg probably claims to be the birthplace of Kentucky Fried Chicken and is home to the University of Louisville and the esteemed Louisville Slugger Company, known for manufacturing baseball bats. Like any city, Campbellsburg is not immune to crime, but its crime rate of 1.66 per thousand residents remains relatively low compared to other areas in the region. In this idyllic community, Gary Bentley resided with his wife and son, cherishing the values of family. Born on August 31, 1984 in Louisville, Kentucky, Gary was the son of Gerald and Lisa Bentley. He held a deep bond with his younger sister, Amy, and embraced the importance of familial connections. From the very start, Gary displayed a genuine country boy spirit and reveled in the wonders of the great outdoors. He found joy in hunting, fishing, and immersing himself in the breathtaking beauty of the Kentucky landscape. Additionally, he had a talent for collecting guns, and his passion for the wilderness was only surpassed by his unwavering loyalty to his beloved sports team, the Kentucky Wildcats. As a young man, Gary pursued a career as an electrician and successfully graduated as a skilled member of the local brotherhood IBW 369. In 2006, Gary's life took an unexpected turn when he crossed paths with Tasha Lynn Etherden, a nurse who was a year older than him. Tasha's outspoken and outgoing nature perfectly complemented Gary's quiet and laid-back personality, creating an undeniable connection between them. They dated for 6 years, establishing a strong foundation for their future together. Finally, in September 2012, Gary and Tasha exchanged vows, solidifying their lifelong commitment to each other. Their home in Campbellsburg was soon blessed with the arrival of their son, Connor, who quickly became the center of their universe. Gary proved to be an exceptional father, showering his son with love and attention. He delighted in chasing the little boy around the house and eagerly anticipated embarking on outdoor adventures with him. The family also cherished their vacations, including a memorable trip to Jamaica in 2016 with their friends Kevin and Amy Day. However, beneath the surface, cracks began to appear in their seemingly idyllic life. Tasha faced challenges at work, putting her job at risk. This uncertainty led to arguments during their vacation. Tensions escalated to the point where it strained Gary's relationship with his closest friend, Kevin. Upon returning home, the situation worsened as Tasha lost her job. Although she eventually found another job, her demeanor grew increasingly irritable and distant, adding further strain to their relationship. Despite these difficulties, Gary remained determined to salvage their marriage, unaware that fate had other plans in store. On December 10, 2017, at 6:54 p.m., Gary's father, Gerald, received a distressing phone call from Tasha, who sounded deeply concerned. Tasha recounted that Gary had failed to answer her calls and messages throughout the entire day. Upon returning home from work, she discovered the garage door wide open, which left her too frightened to enter the house. Concerned for her safety, Gerald drove to their residence in Compilation. He cautiously entered the house and was warmly greeted by their dogs, but his calls for their son Gary went unanswered. Gerald proceeded through the house and eventually arrived at Gary's bedroom, where he was met with a horrifying sight. Gary lay motionless in bed, with a gunshot wound to the back of his head. Overwhelmed by the shocking scene, Gerald immediately dialed 911 for assistance. The paramedics and police from Henry County arrived promptly, but unfortunately, it was too late for Gary. He was pronounced dead at the scene, leaving Gerald devastated. The police discovered a single shell casing next to Gary's lifeless body. The positioning of the body indicated that Gary had been facing away from the bedroom door when the fatal shot was fired, suggesting a cold-blooded execution-style murder within his own home. This revelation stunned the police, especially considering the absence of any signs of forced entry or break-in. Strangely, all of Gary's firearms were missing from the safe, yet nothing else appeared to have been taken. The house remained untouched. However, during their search of the premises, the police stumbled upon a concealed stash of marijuana and cannabis seeds stored in jars, raising suspicions of a potential connection between the death and drug-related activities. Investigators noted that Gary owned several dogs who would typically alert or bark if an unfamiliar person entered the house, yet none of the neighbors reported hearing any commotion or barking sounds in the vicinity. It was evident that Gary himself had been caught off guard, as there were no signs of a struggle. This led investigators to believe that the perpetrator might have been someone known to the dogs, someone familiar with the Bentley family. As part of the investigation, Tasha was interviewed inside a patrol car. Tasha provided a detailed account of her interactions with Gary on the morning of his deer hunting trip. She mentioned attempting to contact him throughout the day, but received no response. Additionally, Tasha revealed that she had visited their friends Kevin and Amy earlier that day. During the conversation about their friends, Tasha accidentally revealed that Gary and Kevin had a heated argument during their trip to Jamaica, which resulted in Gary throwing Godriga Kevin. Based on this information, the police decided to interview Kevin as a person of interest in the case. However, Kevin was able to provide a solid alibi, leading the police to remove him from the suspect list. As is common in such investigations, the detectives shifted their focus to Tasha Bentley, the surviving spouse. Upon delving into their marital history, the police discovered a relationship filled with challenges and conflicts. The breaking point in their 10-year-long marriage occurred after their vacation in Jamaica in September 2016, when Tasha lost her job due to ongoing issues at work. Although her stress seemed to decrease after securing a new job, there were peculiar incidents involving her cars. In 2016, Tasha contacted her father-in-law, Gerald, claiming her car had broken down and she needed a ride. Strikingly, this was not the first time she found herself in such a situation. There were 3 separate incidents where her cars were intentionally set on fire, leading investigators to question if Tasha orchestrated these events for insurance claims. By 2017, the problems in Gary and Tasha's marriage had intensified. Gary's family and close friends began suspecting that Tasha might be involved in an extramarital affair. She frequently spent a significant amount of time on her phone, often claimed to be working late hours, and appeared emotionally distant. This situation escalated to the point where Tasha started spending entire weekends away from Gary. Gerald made multiple attempts to address the concerning situation with his son, Gary. However, Gary consistently dismissed his family's worries and showed reluctance to discuss the issues in his marriage. One particular incident that stood out for Gary's family was the Thanksgiving holiday in November 2017, just a few weeks before Gary's untimely death. Gary's parents had hosted the holiday gathering at their residence in Louisville. During the celebration, Tasha, Gary's wife, seemed unusually eager to leave. After dinner, she excused herself, claiming she wanted to go shopping alone. However, she returned in the early hours of Black Friday without making any purchases. The following week, Tasha expressed her concerns to Lisa Bentley, her mother-in-law. She expressed her reluctance to attend the funeral, which immediately raised red flags for Amy. Amy sensed that there was more to the story, and her intuition proved to be correct. She disclosed to the authorities that Tasha had been engaged in an affair with a coworker named Anthony. The situation had become so serious that Tasha had been planning to leave Gary and move in with Anthony in January 2018. Additionally, the police discovered that both Tasha and Gary had been researching life insurance policies. While Gary had reservations about the idea, Tasha had been advocating for a substantial $1 million policy. These revelations added further complexity to the intricate puzzle surrounding Gary's death. The detectives decided to delve deeper into the matter and made a startling discovery. They found that a newly acquired $1 million life insurance policy had been taken out in Gary's name just 4 days before the tragic event occurred. Tasha had given her consent to this policy by using Gary's electronic signature. The police now possessed sufficient circumstantial evidence to regard Tasha as their primary suspect. On December 11, 2017, Tasha was summoned to the police station for an interview where she was interrogated about her relationship with Anthony. Initially, Tasha asserted that they were merely colleagues and friends, both inside and outside of work. However, as the interview progressed, she eventually confessed to having an affair with Anthony and planning to move in with him. The conversation then shifted to the contentious topic of the life insurance policy. Tasha vehemently denied any involvement in Gary's death, but the police harbored strong suspicions that she either personally shot him or hired someone to carry out the act. Tasha's narrative crumbled when investigators cautioned her about the potential loss of custody of her son. In an emotionally charged breakdown, she admitted to murdering Gary, but with a twist. She claimed that Gary had allegedly assaulted their 4-year-old son, Connor, by throwing him onto the bed, hitting the wall, and repeatedly striking the child. Tasha asserted that she intended to intervene, but she became the target of Gary's violence as he kicked her. Hours later, while Gary was asleep in bed, Tasha used her personal Ruger firearm to deliver the fatal shot, implying that she acted in self-defense. Tasha further revealed that she emptied the gun safe in an attempt to make the crime appear as a failed robbery. She handed the firearms, including the murder weapon, a handgun with purple grips, to Anthony, who stored them at his sister's residence in Louisville. The police briefly considered the possibility of Anthony being an accomplice, but after questioning him and verifying his alibi, he was cleared of all suspicion. The outcome of the case now depended on verifying Tasha's self-defense claim and determining whether Gary had indeed assaulted his son. The police conducted interviews with friends and family members, as well as sought advice from medical experts. They transported 4-year-old Connor to Morton Children's Hospital in Louisville to assess him for signs of long-term abuse, but the investigation yielded a unanimous outcome. There was no evidence to indicate that Gary had inflicted harm upon his son. In fact, the information gathered portrayed Gary as a dedicated father, son, and husband who had never exhibited any violent tendencies towards anyone. However, it was discovered that Tasha had not only brutally murdered her sleeping husband, but had also fabricated a story about an assault in an attempt to mislead the authorities. Consequently, Tasha Bentley was promptly arrested and charged with the murder of Gary, as well as tampering with physical evidence. Additionally, she faced charges related to the possession and distribution of marijuana, as numerous jars of marijuana and cannabis seeds were found in their residence. Tasha Bentley pleaded guilty to her husband's murder on July 20, 2021, and on September 17, 2021, she received a sentence of 55 years in prison. Currently, she is incarcerated at the Kentucky Correctional Institute for Women, with her earliest possible parole date set for November 20th, 2037, according to her inmate records. Following the sentencing, both Gary and Tasha's families engaged in a custody battle over their son, Connor. After the murder, Tasha took Connor to Bullitt County, Kentucky, and entrusted him to Scarlet, who was later revealed to be Tasha's great-aunt. In July 2018, the Bullitt County Family Court granted permanent custody of Connor to Etherton. However, the Bentleys and their attorney, Louis Winner, have claimed that they were not adequately informed about the custody hearing and are now seeking to overturn the custody order. They argue that they have been treated unfairly in Bullitt County, citing Etherton's previous role as a deputy court clerk, which they believe may have influenced the proceedings. Additionally, the Bentleys have raised concerns about their grants and Connor's well-being, alleging that Etherton violated a court order by removing him from therapy and discussing the crime with them. Despite the legal complexities involved, the Bentleys remain steadfast in their pursuit of sole custody for Connor. At the age of 10, Connor continues to grapple with profound emotional distress. He has displayed signs of trauma, often assuming the persona of his late father, Gary, and harboring deep-seated resentment towards his mother, Tasha. When Tasha attempted to arrange a visit with Connor at the correctional facility, he repeatedly expressed disinterest, stating, "Why would I want to visit the person who destroyed my life?" Gary Bentley's tragic story serves as a stark reminder of how financial greed can drive individuals to commit heinous acts, even at the expense of a loved one's life. Now the question arises, was justice truly served for Gary Bentley? And do you agree with the 55-year sentence handed down to Tasha? 19-year-old Chris Hannah Logan resided in Toledo, Ohio, where she worked as an exotic dancer at a club called Platinum Showgirls, performing under the stage name Vegas. Chris Hannah had great aspirations of relocating to Texas in order to pursue her higher education. However, tragically, her dreams would never be fulfilled. Chris Hannah typically worked most nights at the club, but on the night of April 14, 2000, she had the night off and didn't go into work. She was found dead in her apartment just before dawn on the morning of April 15th. The discovery of Krishna's body was made by her neighbor and landlord, Theodora Wilson. Theodora had heard some noises coming from Krishna's apartment during the night, so being concerned, she decided to check in on her. She was horrified when she found Krishna in the living room, having been assaulted and strangled. Toledo police officer Michael Mugler and his partner were dispatched to the Robbins Wood address to assist fire crews on the scene. Their primary task was to secure the area, documenting all individuals entering and exiting and their purposes. Krishna's vehicle was towed as evidence. While doing so, Mugler encountered a man walking down the driveway who identified himself as Krishna Logan's boyfriend, Izell Brown, also known as Zeke. He expressed his desire to know what was happening. Detective Terry Cusino, the on-call Toledo police investigator, was responsible for photographing and videotaping the crime scene. Despite thorough examination, no usable fingerprints were recovered. However, various physical items, including Krishna's underwear around her right ankle, a black bra around her torso, and a flower dress covering her head, were collected as evidence. Lucas County Deputy Coroner Cynthia Bessier conducted Krishna's autopsy. She testified about the external and internal trauma to Krishna's neck, supported by photographs documenting the injuries. Bessier collected swabs from multiple areas of Krishna's body for DNA testing and reported minimal alcohol and no illegal drugs in her system. Bessier determined Krishna's cause of death as strangulation, ruling it a homicide. Her autopsy report was submitted as evidence. At the crime scene, there was no sign of forced entry, leading investigators to initially suspect that she had been killed by someone she knew. As the investigation progressed, one of Krishna's friends from high school, whose name wasn't disclosed, stated that Krishna and her ex-boyfriend, Brown, had been involved in a toxic relationship marked by fighting and arguments, which Krishna had been trying to end. Despite Krishna moving out briefly, Brown continued to stalk her. She revealed that Krishna received money and gifts from Brown occasionally, often in exchange for intimate services. Additionally, Krishna occasionally engaged in physical relationships with her clients at the club. But whenever she did this, Christiana made sure that her friend knew about her whereabouts. The friend disclosed details regarding the night before the murder, stating that on August 14, 2000, around 12 p.m., she and Christiana had met at Christiana's apartment on Robbinswood Avenue in central Toledo. They left in Christiana's new Jeep to show it off. Later, they stopped at Christiana's mother's house, where they greeted a neighbor after returning to Christiana's apartment to prepare for the evening. They left around 7 p.m. visiting various hangout spots. They later attended a party at Krishna's male neighbor's house where Krishna's and the neighbor were seen kissing. Subsequently, they visited 3 after-hours clubs before returning to Krishna's apartment around 4:30 a.m. The neighbor testified that he and Krishna's Logan had been engaged in intimate activities in his room in the early hours of April 15, 2000. Although they had been intimate before, they were only friends and there was no romantic side to their relationship. He mentioned that Christiana had been dating a man from Detroit, but couldn't recall any other boyfriends. Theodore Wilson, Christiana's landlord, provided testimony consistent with the accounts from her friend and her neighbor of the day of the murder. Wilson also recalled encountering a large black man resembling Brown outside Christiana's apartment early on April 15, 2000. Later, she witnessed Christiana and the man entering her apartment after loud music emanated from a car parked nearby. Wilson's 911 call reported the disturbance, which he attributed to furniture being moved in Christian's apartment. Now the only potential link was Christian's former boyfriend, Brown. So law enforcement arrested Brown as the prime suspect in the case. However, he consistently asserted his innocence, and 7 months later, DNA evidence conclusively cleared him of any involvement in Christian's murder. But at the same time, investigators were unaware of the broader pattern emerging. Krishna's case marked the beginning of a series of 3 victims targeted by a repeat offender. In late August of 2000, a girl in her late teens whose name has been kept hidden to protect her identity was making her way home in South Toledo at around 5:30 p.m. Little did she know that her evening stroll would turn into a nightmare. Suddenly, she was snatched off the street by an unknown assailant, dragged to a secluded area. She endured a harrowing ordeal as she was physically assaulted. Just a few weeks later, in early October, another young girl, whose identity was also kept confidential, was on her way to school when she too fell victim to a similar fate. Like the first victim, she was forcefully grabbed by the perpetrator and subjected to a ruthless physical assault. These incidents sent shockwaves through the community, leaving residents fearful and law enforcement authorities scrambling for answers. The similarities between the cases were undeniable, prompting investigators to go deeper into the connections. During the course of their investigation, a crucial discovery was made. The DNA recovered from both victims, as well as the body of Krishna, matched that of the same individual. However, at the time, the DNA profile did not match any known criminals in the database. Undeterred authorities intensified their efforts to track down the perpetrator. With the newfound DNA evidence in hand, they revisited the accounts of the victims, hoping to glean any additional details that could aid in identifying the suspect. Through these interviews, a detailed sketch was made. According to the victims' testimonies, the suspect was described as a light to medium-skinned African-American male, potentially in his early 40s at the time of the attacks. He stood approximately 5 feet 7 inches in height and had either a bald or shaved head, along with a distinctive mustache. One striking feature noted by both victims was the assailant's large protruding stomach. Additionally, the man emitted a strong odor of cigarettes and beer, indicating potential lifestyle habits. Scars or blotchy coloring on his cheeks, coupled with a generally unkempt appearance, further contributed to his description. One victim even recalled the possibility of a tattoo on his upper left arm, although the details remained unclear. Notably, both young women confirmed the perpetrator was not circumcised, providing a unique identifier that could aid in his arrest. Once these links were released to the media, Krishna's mother, Evelyn Logan, made an emotional plea to anyone who could help solve these 3 vicious crimes to please come forward. But despite the collaborative efforts of law enforcement agencies and the community's vigilance, the identity of the perpetrator remained elusive and the case went cold for years. It wasn't until 2013 that a renewed push to solve the cold case breathed new life into the investigation with advancements in forensic technology. And a persistent commitment to seeking justice, authorities continued to pursue leads and explore avenues for closure. And finally, after nearly 2 decades in 2021, a breakthrough occurred. The perpetrator's DNA profile, previously unmatched in criminal databases, produced a hit in the Combined DNA Index System, or CODIS. The long-awaited breakthrough led to the identification of Kenneth M. Marshall, 54, a resident of Hammond, Indiana. The link came up with an unrelated arrest in Lake County, Indiana, where Marshall faced charges for assaulting his girlfriend. After Marshall's arrest for this assault on November 18, 2021, his DNA was collected and uploaded to CODIS, where it produced a match for 3 cold cases dating back to 2000. And among these cases was the murder of Krishna. Marshall was arrested on January 15, 2021 by Hammond police with the help from the U.S. Marshals Great Lakes Task Force. Outside his home on the 900 block of State Street in Hammond, Indiana. Kenneth Marshall's conviction marked the end of a 2-decade-long saga of terror and violence that troubled the lives of numerous victims. On August 16, 2022, Marshall was found guilty by a jury of murder, aggravated murder, felonious assault, and 5 counts of assault. During Marshall's sentencing hearing, Lucas County Common Pleas Judge Stacy Cook delivered a scathing condemnation of his actions. She emphasized the predatory nature of Marshall's crimes, noting that he preyed upon vulnerable individuals for his own gratification. Despite Marshall's defense, arguing that the statute of limitations had expired for some charges, Judge Cook ensured that he would face the consequences of his heinous acts. The severity of Marshall's sentence reflected the gravity of his offenses. Judge Cook ordered him to serve a life term in prison with the possibility of parole, along with the consecutive sentences for the assault charges. As a result, Marshall would be eligible for parole only after serving 130 years behind bars. The impact of Marshall's crime extended far beyond the courtroom. The surviving victims, now adults, bravely testified against him, recounting the trauma they endured. Their testimonies played a crucial role in securing Marshall's conviction and sentencing. For over 5 years, Krishna's family had endured the agony of living without closure. The unanswered questions surrounding her murder had weighed heavily on them. As the wheels of justice turn and Marshall faces the consequences of his actions, we hope Krishna's family finds some solace in the pursuit of truth and knowing that Marshall will spend the rest of his life behind bars. In the early morning of April 7, 1996, Officer Freeman spotted a man dumping large black trash bags into the river's edge on Madison Street, New York. As Freeman approached, the man froze. The 2 cars next to the man with trunks filled with garbage bags caught the officer's attention. Upon searching, he made a shocking discovery. They contained bloody tools and blood-soaked clothes, and the rest had a dismembered body cut into 66 pieces in the most gruesome manner possible. The man disposing of the bags identified himself as 40-year-old Vladimir Zelinin. The police finally found out who the person inside the bags was. Yakov Gluzman, 48, a famous cancer researcher and billionaire, unfortunately fell victim to Vladimir's twisted actions. Then the case took the most unexpected turn when he mentioned the name Rita Gluzman, who was Yakov's wife. Now the big question was, how was Rita connected to this tragic event? Did she plot to kill her husband? Or was Vladimir merely playing a blame game to divert attention and escape the consequences? But to understand this situation fully, we need to rewind and meet the man at the center of it all. Yakov Gluzman. Who was he and what role did he play in this tragic event? Yakov Gluzman was born on January 2, 1948. He was a scientist who was globally recognized for his contributions to cancer research. Yakov and his wife Rita had known each other since childhood in Ukraine, then part of the Soviet Union. Rita Gluzman was born in Trebnitsa, Ukraine in 1948. She was the eldest daughter of Paula and Leib Shapiro, who were both Holocaust survivors. Growing up, Rita developed a unique perspective when she witnessed the death of close family and friends at the hands of the Nazis. However, Yakov's value as a researcher made it impossible for him to secure a visa to leave. After leaving for Israel in February 1970, Rita discovered she was pregnant with their son. Meanwhile, Yakov sacrificed his academic career in the Soviet Union by taking a simple job as a carpenter to make it easier for them to emigrate. With help from Jewish groups, Rita pushed the United Nations to reunite her with Yakov in America. She also went on an 18-day hunger strike near the UN and pressured the US Senate to help reunite her with Yakov. Her efforts forced the Soviet Union to let Yakov join her in the West. The couple then finally reunited in the US in 1972, and Yakov was able to continue his scientific work. Then, 5 years later in 1977, they settled in Long Island, New York. By 1987, Yakov started Harbor Laboratory, a pharmaceutical company in New York. At the same time, Rita had also established her technology company, ECI Technologies, with Yakov's help. Yakov progressed to become the director of molecular biology in 1987 for Ladirley Laboratories in Rockland County. While managing ECI Technologies, Rita had to take the tough decision of relocating to Long Island as Yakov worked in Rockland. But as time went on, the family became more successful and moved into a spacious residence in the rich area of Upper Saddle River, New Jersey. If Rita and Yakov truly had a happy marriage, then Zelenin's claims don't add up. Could he be fabricating this entire story to hide a more sinister motive like eliminating Yakov for financial gain? Before we jump to conclusions, to get a full picture, let's rewind to the time when Yakov's body was found. On Easter, April 7, 1996, Officer Freeman made an unusual discovery at the river's edge in a parking lot. The first thing he saw was 2 cars with open trunks. He also noticed Vladimir Zelenin, who wore a t-shirt and a single glove on his right hand. Zelenin was tossing large black trash bags into the river. Approaching cautiously, Freeman noticed blood splatters on Zelenin's pants and shoes with the surgical glove covered in blood. The smell of drying blood hung in the air. While investigating further, Freeman found a bag with bloody tools, a hacksaw, axes, knives, and a scalpel, and another bag with blood-soaked clothes. Shockingly, the trunks of the 2 cars revealed 8 more bags, and they contained the tragically dismembered remains of Yakov Glusman. His body was cut into 66 pieces, a gruesome act that even involved removing his nose and lips. Officer Freeman stood with Vladimir Zelenin with blood-stained pants. He was Russian and could barely communicate in English. Shockingly, he revealed that Rita Glusman was Vladimir's cousin and that she played a crucial role in helping him immigrate to the United States just 11 months prior. The chilling revelation unfolded as Vladimir confessed that it was actually Rita who forced him into the unthinkable act of taking Yakov's life. The following day, when authorities in Bergen County arrived at Rita's home, she had already left along with her passport. This raised concerns among prosecutors that she might have fled overseas. However, as Zelenin was detained in Bergen County, Rita was supposedly heading for Long Island. It was evident that she was aware that the authorities would be searching for her. During her journey, she briefly stopped in Ville, stealing a set of New York license plates from a parked car to make her vehicle less conspicuous with its New Jersey tags. Even though investigators in both jurisdictions had not officially declared Rita as a suspect in her husband's death, there was little doubt that she had orchestrated the killing and now was running away from the police. A public alert was issued emphasizing their intention to speak with her. Rita stayed out of sight for 6 days following her husband's death. Eventually, the police found her in Cold Spring Harbor, Long Island, on April 12, 1996. The discovery took place during a routine cleaning round at the Hawk's Nest cabin when a cleaning lady spotted Rita breaking into a guest cabin. This cabin was owned by a former company where her husband had worked. The woman had mistaken Rita for a thief and promptly alerted the police about the situation. Upon being confronted, Rita tried to escape by scrambling out of a back window onto the laboratory grounds. But after a while, local police managed to find her and placed her under arrest. Notably, her car had a stolen license plate, and inside the vehicle, authorities found various travel brochures, including some from Switzerland and Australia. Additionally, Rita was carrying a passport and flight information for trips to Switzerland. The police were shocked to see Rita Glusman after her arrest. She was not the woman who walked in luxurious clothes anymore. She had changed her look entirely, which led to the police getting more suspicious. But there was one problem which didn't let the police charge her for the murder of her husband. But the investigation took a turn when cracks began to appear in the seemingly perfect facade of their marriage. During their move from Long Island to New Jersey, hidden tensions emerged between the couple. Despite being a mutual decision, it became apparent that relocating to New Jersey caused financial stress for Rita, especially for her company, ECI Technology. But there was one inconsistency. Rita had claimed that the move left them poverty-stricken, but she was seen wearing mink coats, driving a BMW, and living a pretty luxurious life. In contrast, Yakov Klusman used to drive a 1983 Nissan and dressed in normal jeans. In the summer of 1995, Yakov Klusman moved out of the New Jersey house and rented a second-floor apartment in Pearl River, a few blocks from work. By September of that year, Yakov Klusman had started a romantic relationship with a woman he had previously met while visiting his family in Israel. In 1994, the relationship between Yakov and Rita had irreparably deteriorated. Yakov was advancing his career as a cancer researcher, while Rita's technology company was facing financial ruin. By the fall of 1994, during a telephone conversation with his father, Yakov had admitted that his 25-year marriage to Rita was falling apart. Shortly after, in December 1995, Yakov Klusman filed for divorce. Despite his generous divorce offer, Rita declined it. During their divorce proceedings, the ECI Technology Company became a focal point. Rita wanted sole ownership of the company, while Yakov insisted on properly reviewing its financials before he agreed to any terms. Hearing this, Rita was devastated. When Yakov initiated the divorce, he cited marital cruelty as the reason. For months later, in 1996, the struck as the couple's 25-year-old son lost his life while serving in the Israeli army, which added more strain to their already fragile relationship. Rita found herself growing desperate, and some observed her behavior becoming erratic. Despite receiving $90,000 from Yakov when he moved out a year earlier in 1995, she struggled to curb her desires for luxury. In an attempt to halt the divorce, Rita Klusman hired a private investigator to find any damaging information against Yakov. She resorted to illegal actions like wiretapping Yakov's phone and even threatened to poison his girlfriend with the AIDS virus. When these schemes failed to prevent the divorce, Rita Klusman began plotting to take his life. She faced another setback when she got caught stealing small items from a pharmacy in New Jersey, which led to her arrest on shoplifting charges. Her business continued to decline and the divorce proceedings became more bitter as both sides exchanged accusations. Rita had already made a firm decision and was ready to involve her cousin, Zelina. Her plan, though simple, was incredibly brutal. In the months leading up to Easter, Rita obtained a key to her ex-husband's apartment. She convinced him to give it to her during one of their arguments and had it duplicated. Knowing her ex-husband's routine, she was aware that he often spent Saturday evenings at the lab and usually returned home around 11:30 p.m. Being aware that Rita ensured they had all the tools they would need, a hacksaw, a scalpel, a knife, along with numerous cleaning products. On the night of April 6, 1996, just hours before Yakov was supposed to return home, Rita and Zelina drove from Bergen County and a late model Ford Taurus registered to her company. They parked in a dimly lit area, not very far from Yakov's apartment, and silently waited in the living room. At 11:30 p.m., Yakov pulled his Nissan Maxima into his parking spot and entered his apartment. That's when Zelina delivered the initial blow with an axe in the darkness. He couldn't precisely see where he hit Yakov, but the scientists collapsed to the floor. Rita, filled with rage and vicious force, then attacked her husband. At one point, her ex slipped, striking Zelina on the right hand, which caused continuous bleeding. Rita insisted they had no time to spare and would look into Zelina's wound later. Grabbing a knife from the bag, she plunged into her ex-husband's chest to ensure he was not alive. They dragged his bloody corpse into the bathroom, proceeding to dismember the body. Rita insisted on making sure no piece of the man was large enough to be identified. They cut off his fingertips to prevent fingerprint identification and even removed his nose and lips to make sure anybody who might discover the body could never recognize him. While Zelina continued butchering the body, Rita went on a cleaning frenzy, attempting to remove any evidence of the crime. Only one neighbor, Kathy Armstrong, residing a floor below Yakov, heard something thumping and banging around 3 a.m. on April 7, 1996. Little did she know they were disposing of what remained of Yakov, his body parts and bloody clothing stuffed into 9 plastic garbage bags. The tools used for the gruesome task were crammed into another bag. Subsequently, the bags were loaded into the trunks of the 2 cars. Zelina would then return to East Rutherford, dispose of Glusman's remains in the Psyche River, and then get rid of the car before sunrise. However, a hitch occurred. They were off schedule while loading one of the cars. The leaning accidentally triggered its theft alarm. It was just a brief wail in the night, and if anyone in the apartment complex heard the alarm, they didn't bother to investigate. Despite this, Rita panicked, jumped into the tourists, and instructed the leaning to speed away. They circled the neighborhood for some time before cautiously returning to the apartment complex, making sure the coast was clear and resuming their somber task. Moreover, dismembering Yakov and cleaning his apartment took longer than Rita had anticipated. This schedule was further disrupted by the need to address the wound on Zelina's hand, a consequence of Rita's violent actions against her husband. While traveling south, Zelina and Rita made a stop at CVS Pharmacy in the town of Fairlawn. Rita purchased $32 worth of bandage, and this was recorded by a surveillance camera. After investigators examined the crime scene at Yakov Glusman's Pearl River apartment, it became clear that what initially appeared as a straightforward murder case was anything but that. While the investigators discovered some weird traces of forensic evidence, they had not yet undergone testing. The uncertainty remained even after testing, as there was no guarantee that the evidence would straight out point to Rita as the culprit, even if they managed to find a stray fingerprint belonging to Rita. The police were aware that a skilled defense attorney could dismiss it, connecting it to one of the couple's periodic arguments. At this stage, the police lacked concrete evidence and relied solely on Zelenin's confession. However, this posed a challenge as New York state law dictated that a murder case couldn't rest on the testimony of an accomplice unless supported by additional witnesses or compelling evidence, which was currently absent. The day after Rita's arrest, her attorney, Michael Rosen, tried to secure bail, citing the unusual nature of the case. Even though there was the possibility of murder charges, the judge rejected bail, and this prompted Rosen to file a felony examination. Prosecutors had 48 hours to prove Rita was dangerous, and there was a risk of her fleeing again for her to be held without bail. Rosen succeeded, as the police were unable to provide sufficient evidence, and Rita left for jail after paying $250,000 bond. But then, a call from an FBI agent changed everything. In a surprising turn, Rosen was directed to bring Rita to the U.S. Federal Court building in White Plains. This was unexpected, and Rosen was confused about why the federal government was getting involved. As Rosen and Rita arrived, the reason became clear. While Michael Rosen had been focused on securing bail for Rita, local authorities had collaborated with federal prosecutors and planned a unique approach to charge her for her involvement in her husband's death. In a concise 4-page complaint, federal prosecutors used the 1994 Domestic Violence Statute, officially named the Violence Against Women Act. It was a bold move. This law allowed federal intervention when someone crosses state lines to commit domestic violence, a tactic never against a woman until now. However, it provided the authorities with the leverage needed to prosecute Rita. Notably, it granted them the freedom to use Zelenon's testimony. Later, Zelenon explained in court how the whole incident took place and how they dismembered Yakov. The police brought in additional evidence, including eyewitness accounts from Yakov's neighbors, who spotted a couple loading bags into a car at 3 a.m. on April 7, 1996. A drugstore clerk identified Rita as the distressed woman, purchasing bandages and antiseptic at 4 a.m. on the same morning. Furthermore, a private investigator hired by Rita to spy on her husband and his lover confessed to her controlling nature. On April 30, 1997, over a year and a half after Yakov's death, Rita faced the U.S. District Court Judge Barrington Parker. She insisted that she didn't kill her husband, but the jury, convinced by Zelina's words, found her guilty of murdering Yakov, chopping him into pieces and planning to dump him in the river. The judge sentenced her to spend the rest of her life in prison. The woman, once hailed as a symbol of freedom for an entire class in the Soviet Union, now found herself incarcerated behind bars. Later, in May 1997, Vladimir was sentenced to 22.5 years in prison. In 2020, Rita Glusman was released from prison on compassionate grounds due to her declining health, which included multiple strokes and early Parkinson's disease. Rita's plea for a second chance to avoid dying in prison was considered by the judge. Although Yakov's brother expressed horror and fear in a letter opposing her release, despite concerns, the judge permitted her release and Rita returned home. Yakov Glusman's life took a terrible turn because of a broken marriage. The sad part is it was because of his wife, who was once seen as a symbol of freedom. Instead of finding a peaceful solution, their relationship turned into a nightmare. 31-year-old Jamie Lynette Yazzie lived in Pinion, Arizona in 2019. She came from a small town that is part of the Navajo Nation. Jamie was working as a nursing assistant. She was dating 27-year-old Trey James, a fellow Navajo Nation member. Jamie failed to show up for work on July 1st, 2019. 5 days later, with no sign of her, her mother reported her missing. Investigators took a closer look at Jamie's boyfriend, Trey James. They found that both Jamie and James were seeing different people at the time of her disappearance. James' sister told detectives she had received a Facebook message from Jamie stating that James had fired off 2 rounds and chased her back into the house. Jamie's brother told authorities he and his girlfriend had been drinking with Jamie and James the evening before she disappeared. He recounted that James had shown off a black .45 caliber or 9mm handgun he'd gotten for his birthday. In the days following Jamie's disappearance, James camped out at his aunt's house. Family members reported to investigators he was in possession of a handgun and was acting aggressive, nervous, and paranoid. Jamie's blood, suspected cleaning products, a pistol, a stained and partially burned mattress, and spent shell casings were found at the couple's shared home after 2 searches. James' family members told investigators the couple's toxic relationship had been punctuated by domestic abuse. His sister and aunt described James as being abusive and aggressive towards Jamie, leading up to her disappearance. Jamie's co-workers told investigators that she'd been having problems with James as well. One colleague divulged that Jamie had sent her a picture of herself with a black eye the year before her disappearance. James' father also told detectives his son was responsible for Jamie's disappearance. Under questioning, he noted the couple's mutual infidelities, allegedly stated that his son had admitted that he messed up and that Jamie had been messing around with other guys. This all led investigators believing James gunned down Jamie at the couple's home in the early morning hours of July 1st, 2019, following an argument about infidelity. Without a body proving James' guilt was difficult and the case went cold for a short while. Then, in November of 2021, Jamie's incomplete skeletal remains were discovered at the Hopi Indian Reservation, which is just southwest of Pinion, Arizona. An autopsy confirmed, as suspected, that Jamie had been fatally shot, a gunshot wound to her head. James was questioned by investigators in January of 2022 and denied ever being rough with Jamie. He told FBI agents the last time he saw his girlfriend was when they were drinking at the couple's home with Jamie's brother and his girlfriend. He insisted she left with them. Finally, in August of 2022, Trey James was arrested in connection with Jamie's case. He was charged with taking her life. 30-year-old James was also slapped with an additional 6 charges: kidnapping, brandishing a gun, 2 counts of assault by strangling an intimate partner, 1 count of assault by suffocating an intimate partner, and 1 count of assault with a dangerous weapon. The Department of Justice had this to say in a statement on August 5th of 2022. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Arizona is committed to addressing the persistent violence endured by Native American families and communities in the state of Arizona, including by working with tribal nations to address the important issues of missing Indigenous persons in the acts of domestic violence. Navajo Nation President Jonathan Nez also released a statement where he said, "We continue to pray for the family and friends of Jamie. With the recent development, we are hopeful that we are a step closer to providing closure for the family and they can continue to heal. Our law enforcement and criminal investigators continue to offer support to the FBI to bring justice for Jamie and her loved ones." James appeared in court for a detention hearing on August 8th of 2022. A magistrate judge ordered that he be held without bond pending trial. James has pled not guilty, according to his attorney, Roberta McVickers. James's trial is currently ongoing in October 2022. If convicted, he faces life in prison. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of unsolved mysteries. Cold cases not only challenge our understanding of the past, but also ignite our curiosity and determination for answers. Remember to subscribe to stay updated on our latest investigations. And if you have any information regarding the cases we've covered, don't hesitate to reach out. Together, we can shed light on the shadows of the past and bring closure to those who seek it. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and never stop seeking the truth.